janefinch.com.
A perfect God cannot create anything in a brand new way, brand new, it's a brand new day. I'm trying to live a brand new way.
So this is the Fir Grove Connections community in the Jane and Finch area, and it's up for gentrification. It's coming at the end of this year. Residents are getting displaced with very short notice, with really no clear idea where they're going to be moving. And where will this land go? When it is sold, where are these dollars going to go? What's going to be built here? We also know that TTC is coming, and when TTC development happens, rent increases and condo developments come. So we know what's happening here, but look at the state before governments, levels of governments take notice of the housing conditions where people are living in. There is a national housing crisis happening here, and dollars that were promised in this community in 2015 are now gone. The community's been asking, have been fighting, but it's also tiresome when we see gentrification happening across the city of Toronto and our election officials aren't representing us. For janeandfinch.com, this is Butterfly. Peace. So tell me why this event here, Grow Our Grassways, is happening today in the community of Connections, Fir Grove.
Okay, so this event is called Humans of Connections, and what we're trying to do is really just have some humanity and dignity about the fact that there's residents here and there's people who live here. The buildings are actually scheduled to close by the end of this year. There's 4 buildings I think that are going to be closed, and my building I'm an impacted resident. That means I'll be relocated along with 107 families. So there's lots of families here that are being relocated, and it was a really cold process, I felt like. So I really wanted to restore something, have something that was restorative and that was fun and that really helped to commemorate the people in the neighborhood. And so alongside the barbecue, we have some photographers here who are taking images and maybe recording some testimonial or narrative from residents in the neighborhood, just so that we can hear our side, because I feel like whenever there's relocations and whenever there's things happening at TCHC, you only hear about the buildings, and you only hear about a gang of residents, or that's actually a word, gang. You don't really hear about the people who live here and have a livelihood here and raise their children here, and the kids that live here and people who go to school and work and all that kind of stuff. So the people who are documenting things, where are they going to post it so folks can check it out? So the purpose of having the testimonials and the photographs taken is to do a gallery. So hopefully that's something we could give back to the community, is a gallery exhibit. So hopefully at a later date, once the photos are edited, we have the testimonials alongside narratives. It's kind of like the Humans of New York project that we see on Instagram and Facebook, but just for our neighborhood. And we're hoping to have a gallery, and hopefully it could be a traveling gallery. That's one of the hopes. So that we'll be, maybe bring it to City Hall and have that as an exhibit there, because they have the open exhibits. So yeah.
So what is the process like? So residents are being told, okay, you have to move. What is the transfer process looks like? What does that look like?
So in December of 2016, we learned that our units would be closed. And it was up to a decision at City Hall, Toronto City Council would be making a decision to close the units based on what the engineer report said. The engineer report was gathered around the same time as the Reset project was happening, which was supposed to be a project that rehabilitated the buildings and restored community amenities, just so that they were usable and had more safety practices embedded within the architecture and all of that. But unfortunately, based on the engineer's report, they said the buildings needed to be closed. But we didn't learn about that until 2016. They started the Reset project in 2015. So we lived for a year and a half. I don't know if you've taken image of the around the neighborhood, but there's some units have like construction gates. There's some around here, and that's how we've been living for like the last year and a half before they told us that the units would be closed. So in terms of like the process, like they had a lottery, like that's how they determine like how you're matched with a preference unit. They give you a vacancy list, and then you choose from there, and then based on your number in the lotto system, you're given a unit. If someone has a higher number than you, or sorry, a lower number than you on the lotto, that's when you don't get that unit. That's your preference. So it's kind of like a weird system. It doesn't really take into account like accessibility issues and needs for people in the neighborhood, like daycare, schooling, all those kind of things. Unfortunately, one of the sentiments from the city hall councilor, can't remember her name, but she was just like, well, relocation isn't new to us, so like everybody who lives in these neighborhoods kind of have to deal with it. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like fair, and it was
I don't think they understand like how community is embedded and how long people live here, and like this is not just a place, or people aren't just tenants. This is a community, and these are residents that are being displaced and ripped apart, right?
Exactly.
So in terms of mobilization, is there anything that can happen at this point, or is it a done deal?
Well, like it feels like it's a done deal, but we're able to have events like this. We started a petition that was online, and it caught the attention of TCHC residents and their managers and all of that. We did a deputation at Toronto Community Housing's executive board meeting, and we expressed our feelings about the relocation, the lack of fairness around it, the lack of equity for residents who aren't being relocated, because services are wielded out in different ways for residents who are being displaced, and residents who are not being displaced don't have a lot of access to information around relocation. I don't know how many people know that like the buildings that are not closing today or within the next few months are going to have a 5-year expiry date. So like that equity around information and access to information is very, very it's a disparity that was produced around the relocation, and we're trying to rectify that. So in terms of the future plans, hopefully we can spread more awareness about relocation and closures for TCHC, and I think that's like one of the priorities.
Thank you so much for your time. What do you think of the event today?
It's fun. The kids are having fun, and we have parents out and lots of support from community agencies. TCHC is sponsoring the event, so they're meeting some of the demands we had in our petition, which is awesome, and we're hoping to be able to work with them as a resident group that isn't like infiltrated by the power structures that they have, because we want to keep it resident oriented and resident focused, and about breaking down barriers in terms of communication and information access for residents.
And so being a young person who grew up like coming into this country and landed here in Connections in Fir Grove, and what's happening right now with the gentrification, how's that affecting you?
So for me, it's affecting me in a lot of ways, one of which is waking up and not knowing where I'm going to be living within the next few months is something that has been very stressful. As I said, I've lived in the community since I was 7 years old, so not knowing if I'll be here within the next few months due to the relocation, that's something that's very scary, and it's also very stressful.
What are you hearing from your other neighbors in terms of that? Like, I know this neighborhood's built on like grandmothers and children and their children, and there's generations here. So how are people feeling? Is there hope still? Like, it seems like it's been a whole glitchy process.
So with the residents that I've spoken to, I'm finding it's a lot of the same feelings. A lot of people are stressed out by the move because they don't know where they're moving to. A lot of people also want to stay in the neighborhood but are given options that aren't within the neighborhood. A lot of people are also they're scared of where they're going to go and if they will ever be able to come back to the place that they know as home.